Every place has a story. Sometimes it's hidden. You can walk the streets and never realise it's there. Other times it's right in front of you, in the architecture, in the statues, in the streets. You can even feel it in the air. Riga in Latvia was one of those places for me. When I visited in 2020 during a brief break in the lockdowns, I was immediately struck by it. A city shaped by empires, by conflict and by culture, where history seems to just sit beneath the surface. To me, it felt like a place that had to be written about, and eventually that became the setting for my novel Riga Rising. But today we're going a step further, beyond first impressions, beyond the surface, and exploring the city through the eyes of someone who actually lives it. Hey, I'm Luke. I'm an author of archaeological adventure novels. I travel the world looking for stories to put into my books and share with you right here on the Adventure Story podcast. Now, just quickly before we dive in, wait. If you would like some more adventure in your life, I would love to welcome you inside the Adventure Society. And let's be honest, who doesn't want more adventure, right? You can never have too much. This weekly newsletter is your ticket to travel with me, to share real-world adventures, and find out when a new story or a new season of this podcast drops. There's a link in the show notes to join the Adventure Society today. My guest today is Lelde Benke-Lungevica, an Australian-born Latvian writer and tour guide based in Riga. She first moved to the city at the age of 7, left again at 18 and eventually returned home in her mid-20s, a journey that shaped how she sees the place she now calls home. Through her blog, Life in Riga, Lelde explores the city's history, the culture, and the hidden details. Not just as a visitor, though, but as someone constantly navigating that idea of belonging and identity. Lelde, welcome to the Adventure Story podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for making the time. And I'm excited to speak about Riga because it is a place that I've visited. I was there in 2020, and this was during the COVID time, so I think my experience there was not the normal one, right? I think I had the city to myself. It was very sort of isolating in a way, but there was something special about it that I just can't quite explain, and I've wanted to revisit, but haven't yet done it. But I absolutely will. What's special about it for you, and how would you explain that to someone?
The special thing that you speak of, the way that I see it, or at least the way I feel it, is that Riga has this kind of DIY spirit or quality about it. It feels like no matter the things that the city goes through, or the wars that it's experienced, grand-scale fires and everything, it manages to find a way to rebuild itself back stronger and better. Another word I would use is resilient. And I feel like you can feel that not only in terms of like the infrastructure, but in terms of the processes going on and the things happening in the city, and how there's lots of grassroots initiatives, and how there's places like venues just popping up in previously abandoned locations, and somehow miraculously people find the energy and the money to transform them into something. We don't always necessarily have a lot of money or big budgets, but we always kind of find a way to tackle problems or find solutions.
That's fantastic, isn't it? That it's sort of down to the people, isn't it? The generation of a city like that, or the regeneration of a city like that, comes from the grassroots, as opposed to, well, I suppose to as well as sort of government initiatives and things. But it's really sort of people caring about their city first and foremost that creates that vibe and that feeling.
Absolutely, and Latvians themselves, we think of ourselves as not being very good at collaborating, at working together, but actually when you look at the things going on and the kinds of initiatives taking place, you find plenty of examples of like private-public partnerships, council working together with NGOs and stuff. So I think that's just a stereotype that's not really um, founded anymore these days.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's really interesting. So tell me, how would you describe the city, or would you describe the city to people who have never been to it, or maybe even never heard of it? Right, because it is one of those places that it's not at the top of people's to visit list, is it? And that's almost its beauty. The people that are there are either locals or have really sought out their adventure to that place, and you get rewarded tenfold by doing so, I think.
Yeah, it's true. Fortunately or unfortunately, however you look at it, we don't really have this clear reputation yet. Some people know of the region, the Baltics, but they might, mix all three Baltic countries together. Of course, you can't say that about everyone. Plenty of people know plenty about Latvia, but there are certain stereotypes that dominate and unfortunately still resonate quite a lot in the media as well. I would say the most obvious one is that Latvia is still, a post-Soviet country, even though it's 30 plus years since we've been independent again. So yeah, I think people might have this image of grey, brutalist structures, but that's actually just a very small part of the city. Of course, yes, we do have period architecture, but it coexists with a lot of very different styles. We have a beautiful old town. Of course, that's seen a lot on the postcards and in the guidebooks and everything. Art Nouveau architecture. Those are like the commonly presented gems. But personally, as someone who lives here, I'd say it's just the perfect kind of place to live because of its size. It's not huge. It's not crowded. It's very comfortable. We're blessed to have really easy access to nature, forests. I mean, even within the city, we have forest parks, we have beaches. So you're never far from somewhere to go and clear your head, to cycle, to do sports. It's just a very nice and relaxed place, and it feels safe. I know that's a tough one to talk about. I mean, yeah, I'm not necessarily talking about the geopolitical scale right now, but I'm talking about like local crime level kind of safety. It feels for me as a 30 plus woman, I can say that I feel comfortable going out and about most of the time. So yeah, lots of pluses.
Yeah, I remember some of these things from my own time there. The size was one thing. Being able to walk from one side of the city to the other within an hour or so. You've really got that sort of size. And the parks, I remember being particularly wonderful. The trees and the way they're sort of laid out for easy walking and cycling. And there seemed to be a big culture of people on the weekend, sort of whole families walking out. Maybe this was a result of the COVID times as well. Whole families sort of walking together and enjoying the nature together, which I like to see.
Yep, and the city is only one place where you can do that. Of course, yeah, you can hop on a train or take the car, and there's loads of nature trails, and you'll find them super busy at weekends. Of course, you can find places that are slightly further out, and you can be completely alone as well. That's one of the greatest things as well about living in Latvia. You can find yourself alone quite easily, which is a modern day luxury.
Yes, it really is, isn't it? When you think about people who live in capital cities across Europe and across the world, they're amongst millions of other people, right? And having a few moments to yourself is a real challenge. So you're right that that's a real thing to be treasured, I think.
I just think it's definitely worth digging beyond the stereotypes and giving Riga a chance if you don't know much about it. It will surprise you. That's what I hear the most from people who've not known much before coming here, but then they come and they're like, "Oh wow, this is nice." And it's not just a place to go for the weekend. It's also somewhere that you can spend more time. Because Riga is often presented as like a cheap and cheerful weekend getaway. The cheapness, well, that's also debatable these days. Of course, we're feeling the effects of global economic trends, but yeah, it's just worth coming for longer than a weekend because Riga is only part of the story. Actually, Latvia is very compact itself, so you can easily extend the weekend with trips to other towns.
So outside of Riga, where might you go then?
Lots of places, but I would start with ones that are easy to get to by train. The usual top destinations would be Sigulda, which is what we call the Switzerland of Latvia. It's relatively hilly. It's a town on the shores of the river Gauja. So it's a beautiful valley. It's especially beautiful in autumn when the trees turn golden. And there's castles on either side of the valley. Yeah, just lots of really scenic scenery and historical sights to see, and sports that you can indulge in. There's a bobsleigh track, so you can take a bobsleigh. Obviously, you have someone driving, but yeah, that's something that you can do. Boating, cycling.
Yeah, fantastic. I remember going to Sigulda, in fact, when I was there, and lots of things were closed, unfortunately, but it was a great little trip. I really particularly enjoyed the train ride, just rumbling through the forest that appeared to go on both directions of the track for as far as you could see. You know, it gives you a sort of glimpse into that Latvian landscape, which is quite different to the landscape in other parts of Europe that I'd visited.
True. Yeah, I took a train on a line that I hadn't used before last year. And that was even something I noticed. I was like, wow, just forests for miles and miles and miles and miles.
Yeah, you really, I enjoyed that. So you mentioned there the city and what the city looks like and the architecture slightly, but I'd just sort of like to focus in on that for a minute because Riga has a complex past, lots of different influences that have sort of ruled over it for various periods over the last couple of hundred years. How might a visitor notice that as they're walking around the city? What would they see to hint to this period or that period or whatever?
Yeah, absolutely. There's many layers to the city. So its story begins in the old town, which is where you see the oldest structures that go back to the 13th century and beyond. That's where you see the churches and the old buildings that speak of the trade that used to take place. Riga's always been a massive trade centre. And you see the remnants of the old city walls, because originally Riga was basically, the size of the old town, and then it expanded from there. And the city walls are no longer in place. They're no longer functional. And then you have the canals and the grand parks and buildings like the opera, and sort of extends from there to the Art Nouveau, which speaks of the turn of the 19th and 20th century when economically Riga was sort of in its prime. And then all throughout, and in some areas in particular, you see Soviet era buildings. So there's all these hints, and it's not just the city centre that speaks of Riga and how it's developed. It's all throughout the city that you can sort of witness the history, and it's like a live museum. Essentially, yeah. But sort of beyond the architecture, I would say also food. Food tells the story. Like if you go into Lido, which is a really popular Latvian bistro chain, you might recognize some of the foods as being more German, or perhaps you might recognize something from the more sort of Slavic cultures. And yeah, it's difficult sometimes to know exactly what is Latvian food because of how much we've been influenced and shaped by the powers, by the cultures that ruled over Latvia or before its independence.
What would be a typical Latvian food dish to have when you're there? What would be something that you think, traces you back to those roots?
Yeah, a purely Latvian dish we really call local, and it has this European Union status as being designated Latvian. Latvian product is these grey peas, and it's a dish that we eat with bacon and onion. So it's really hearty. So you might have it in autumn or winter, and you can get it at like tavern kind of places in the old town.
I can picture that. Yeah. Yes, in one of those Art Nouveau buildings in the old town in the one dark winter's night, having this hearty sort of, and it's like a stew, or is it sort of you have it with bread or with rice or potatoes or whatever?
It's like a stew in its own right, but the peas are quite solid. But yeah,
let's continue talking about the city itself for a few moments longer, because I'm interested. You mentioned a lot of the places there, walking around the old town, going to the market, places that I remember visiting. There's some beautiful churches, isn't there? Some towering spires and this sort of thing. But what are some places that people often miss that you think they miss on their cheap weekend tour that you've described? They're there for sort of 48 hours or something. What places do people miss, and why do you think those places are important?
A lot of people, especially if they've chosen to come just for a couple of days, would probably stay in the old town or stay in the very center of town and sort of stick to that side of the river, because Riga is split by a river. But I would strongly suggest, even if you are there just for the weekend, to take the tram across to the other side, or just walk across the bridge to Pārdaugava, which is the other side of the river. And maybe start with the National Library of Latvia, which is a stunning building in itself. I mean, it's controversial. Some people love it, some people hate it, but the building has a lot of meaning to us. And they do fantastic exhibitions on more than just the history of books. They do a lot of wonderful research that they present in very modern ways, and they're always translated in English as well. And from the top of the building, you can have a really nice view across the city as well. And then just beyond there is beautiful big sprawling city park, where you can kind of feel how the city's changing these days to become a much more people-focused place, and you can feel that the shift is kind of moving towards being pro pedestrians and pro cyclists, and being less car-centric. Uzvaras Parks, yeah, it used to be the site of a huge Soviet-era memorial, which was knocked down at the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. That was a very symbolic event to Latvians. And since then, the energy of the park has changed completely, and it's become a really, really nice place for families and people to hang out. So that's just, to feel the sense of what the city's like and see what local people are like. It's a nice place to visit. And just beyond that is Argenskalns Market, which is not as big as Riga Central Market, which is the one that's mentioned in all the top 10 places to see and visit in Riga. But Argensgans Market is smaller, but no less impressive, I would say. And it's also one of those examples of a kind of DIY initiative that I mentioned at the beginning a few years ago. Some amazingly brave local entrepreneurs invested loads of money to completely revamp the old market building and turn it into like a neighborhood hub. So you have the food stalls on the ground floor where you can buy veggies, fruit, meat, dairy, everything like that. And then upstairs you have the food stalls where you can buy meals. So you can actually hang out there during the day and in the evening.
Yeah, that sounds great. I love those sorts of places when I'm traveling that take you away from the regular top 10, like you described there. And whilst the top 10 are good to see as well, you want to sort of go beyond that, don't you? You want to move beyond that and see where the locals, people like yourself, hang out, where you go on a Saturday and the things that you enjoy about your city. So talking about you moved away from the city for a while and then came back. What led you to make that return? Why did you decide to sort of move back to Riga?
Yes, so I was living in Scotland for a while, where I started working, and I did some time in Canada as well, and Belgium as part of my studies. And then, yeah, when I was 24, something started to shift. There was a click. I literally started to feel homesick. I think it was mostly related to the people that I'd left behind in Latvia, who I started to feel were really my people. And while I was at uni, of course, I also had this more or less permanent crowd of friends. But then once we graduated, we all kind of split up. Everyone went in their own direction. So I lost that feeling of having my own solid community. And that was one of the things that I think affected my decision. And then my parents, they also started sending me a magazine every week, which was a brilliant idea. And I suggest this to anyone who wants to persuade a relative to move back home from somewhere else. I would get this weekly dose of not only news, but like positive stories of Latvian individuals and companies doing great things in Latvia. And it was just this kind of slow drip of information that, got me thinking, hey, it's actually it sounds like it's a really great place to be. And that there's a lot of potential and a lot of things that could be done there. And maybe it's just a good place for me to build my career and, a family. That's sort of how it happened. And eventually I applied for a job in Latvia while I was still in the UK. And I got the job and I had a month to make the move.
So it never sort of, it never sort of left you that you were always connected to the place, I suppose is what I'm saying. Even through those years of being away, it was always a connection. Even though you weren't there, you were reading about it. You were obviously continuing to have relationships with people that lived there and all of this sort of thing. So really it was only a matter of time, I suppose, before you felt, right, this is where I need to go back to,
Yes and no. Like when I left to uni, I was pretty sure that I wouldn't be going back. And I know a lot of people thought that I'm this kind of international, person of the world kind of who is unlikely to ever stay in one place for very long. My dad thought that I would end up in Brussels working for some international agency or political organization or something. So yeah, I kind of surprised myself and a few other people by returning home. But although I was in touch with people, all the while I was away, and I would spend uni holidays back home as well.
Is that quite a common thing for younger people to leave Riga? And is it also common for them to return, or a lot of the time once they're out, they sort of go and settle all over the world?
It is common to spend some time abroad. Of course, it became much easier when Latvia joined the EU. Study possibilities became a lot easier as well. But even before then, people were finding ways. So one reason why people leave is to study. Another reason is people leave to work because, you can't deny that salaries are better in other countries. And so some people move abroad for a little while to grow their personal capital. Some people make the move permanently because they believe that the conditions will be better for them in another country. So there's many reasons why people leave, but there is certainly a noticeable trend in people moving back lately because Latvia is developing, and people are kind of finding that they might as well, live here. It's really not a bad place to live. They've spent some time abroad and come to a few realizations, and especially if they're like someone who's recently graduated or someone who's on the verge of starting a family. I think those are quite common moments when people decide to move back.
It must be exciting to be part of a place that is changing, that's growing, that's developing, where you can really make an impact. What I suppose I'm saying is if you're in London or in Glasgow or Edinburgh or Paris or Berlin, whatever, there's only... You're one of many people there. You're in a place where it's already very developed. It's already got all these things. Whereas I suppose in Riga there could be, or maybe I've got this wrong, there could be a perception that you could sort of help make the city in the image, help grow the city, help make the city in the image that you and the other people sort of like. Is that
absolutely? That's how I think a lot of people see it. And how I felt it as well. When I lived in the UK, there was always a solution to everything. You could always find an answer online, or there was always a system or a process that you could adhere to. And then when I moved here, initially I found it frustrating. You'd be in this situation where you don't know how to do something. At the time I moved with my ex-partner who was British, and so we had to deal with a fair bit of bureaucracy, getting his paperwork in order and stuff. And you'd turn to these government organizations, and they often just didn't know the answer themselves, or they'd send you to a different department or a third department, or, and you'd kind of never really get the answer that you were looking for. One person might get one answer, another person might get another answer, and sometimes there just weren't clear instructions or guidelines or processes in place. And originally, it seemed really frustrating. It's like, whereas now I have kind of found a way to reframe it and see it as a good thing that, Riga's or Latvia's never really ready. There's always something to do, and that means there's lots of potential here. There's a lot of things that still need fixing, solving, introducing, streamlining, and that's exciting. So you can come back home with your international degree and your international experience and actually put it to use. And of course, a lot has happened. I mean, I've been back now since 2013, and it's, leapt forth. Like there's really, starting from just basic things like the amount of information that's available in English. When I moved with my ex-partner, we started our blog, Life in Riga, partly because there was so little information available in English for anyone wanting to move here. Whereas now, a whole different story. So many official resources are much better than they were, and then there's loads of new Instagram channels and media platforms available in English. So yeah, you'd come across fewer hurdles, but well, they still exist.
And tell me what that was like about coming home then, because you must have, and with a city that is accelerating as quickly as Riga is, there must have been a perception that you got back and sort of didn't recognize it, or perhaps you must have changed as well as the city, but it must have taken a while to sort of get it back into step with the place, I suppose is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I definitely experienced reverse culture shock. I think that's the official term. Yeah, one of the reasons was where what I mentioned earlier. Yeah, the things that now seem completely normal and interesting then seemed frustrating and challenging. So it's just a question of how you look at things, and understanding the context of why things are the way they are. And I think you only really start to understand that context once you've lived here again for a little longer. And yeah, I mean, yeah, you can speak about the sort of practical aspects as well, learning to live in a different climate again, and having to update your wardrobe. I remember I had to completely restock my wardrobe because I didn't have much clothing that was suited to an office job in winter. Because, yeah, like in Scotland, I found that at least in the industry that I worked in, I could get away with quite a casual dress code and lots of like rain gear. Like I would wear, just a raincoat to work and stuff. Whereas in Latvia, I had to buy something more smart casual looking, and people didn't really wear trainers with dresses at that time. I mean, it's changed again. It's changed a lot since then. But yeah, there were all these little anecdotal moments and nuances.
Yeah. So, Lelde, this has been fantastic. I ask one question at the end of each interview because I'm interested, and because I think we all sort of have these adventure stories in our life that encourage us to do things, that encourage us to make these decisions. Looking back, what adventure stories, whether they were books or movies or legends or stories that your parents or grandparents told you, first sparked your imagination?
So the stories that I spent reading in my childhood, or devouring, yeah, I read a lot of Enid Blyton books, Famous Five and The Secret Island. Because I grew up in Australia, then I read mostly in English, and I still do to this day. And those were just my absolute favorites. I think I reread all of them again and again and again. And it seemed completely wild how these kids my age or slightly older just led these incredibly adventurous lives, and they would do things that I was never allowed to do, and I could never imagine doing.
Yeah, I could have pictured that as well. I remember reading some of those myself. Yeah. LD, that was fantastic. Where can people find your blog online?
Lifeinriga.com. Originally, when I founded it in 2013, it was a platform through which we shared different observations of what it's like moving back to Latvia. So we interviewed people as well, and we had practical articles on topics like how to register a bank account and stuff like that. It was meant as a resource for expats or anyone considering to move to Latvia. But then the longer I stayed, the less that seemed relevant to my own life, and the more of that kind of information became available on official resources. So it became more of like a platform for sharing stories of what life is actually like here. Again, interviews with people doing interesting things, observations of different traditions, yeah, things that were fun for me to write as well.
Yeah, I love that. And I suppose that's an example of you investing in the place, right? You seeing a gap in the market, a thing that doesn't provide the information people need, and going for it. Because I imagine life in anothercity.com, there are hundreds of blogs on this topic, whereas you sort of found that and you put that to good use for other people.
Yeah, I felt like there was potential to kind of counteract a lot of the stereotypes, some of which I mentioned in our talk as well.
I love conversations like this when it's clear that the person you're talking to cares about a place and they know it in a different way. It's all very well me talking about Riga as someone who's visited or a different place, but Lelde knows it. She breathes that place and enjoys it and has returned there. I think there's something special about that as well. She knew it was her home and she went back to live there once again. Brilliant, really enjoyed it. And it did make me want to make a revisit to Riga, because when I was there in 2020, as I said in the interview, it was a strange experience. It was wonderful, but it was strange too. So I wrote a book based on my time there. It's called Riga Rising. You can find it wherever books are sold, audiobook available as well. Go and check it out if that sounds interesting to you. This is the Adventure Story Podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out today. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe, please like, and please share. It'll take you just seconds, but really helps me spread the word about this show. And if you need more adventure in your life, as I said at the top, we all do, I think, you might want to join the Adventure Society. This weekly newsletter is your ticket to travel with me, to share my real-world adventures and find out when a new story or a season of the podcast drops. You can find a link to that in the show notes. And if you're a fan of adventure stories like the one we talked about today, check out my books at lukerichardsonauthor.com. Bon voyage, enjoy the adventure, and I'll see you next time.